If you keep doing something because you love it, that's the perfect ingredient because you're going to fail a lot, but you won't care because you love doing it. So you're going to keep coming back at it. And that's how you learn. That's how you build a skill. Failure is the best teacher. You're never going to learn more than when you fail.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I am your host, Shawn David Nelson, sometimes known as that love sack guy. Today, we're going to have that onion guy. It's going to be amazing. Listen, I get asked all the time, you might come to me, in fact, and say, "Oh, Shawn, I know you import all this stuff from Asia. You've been making stuff overseas for decades. I have this idea. Can you help me get it made?" Yeah, no problem. In fact, making stuff is the easy part. And this is something I've discovered. And you don't have to speak Chinese like I do. The truth is I could have done it without speaking Chinese. It's a clever part of my story. But getting stuff made in this day and age is easy, actually. It's out there. It's easier than ever. Selling it at scale is the hard part. And we're going to break that down on today's podcast with someone from a completely different genre, a completely different vein, proving that whether it's foam and fabric or wood and couches, or whether it's uh, comedy or satire, writing, we've all got something that needs to be sold, promoted, gotten out there in the world, and it's hard. We'll talk about some of the ways to do it. We'll get into how sales is hard, but a good product can help sell itself. And by the way, you may think it's funny. I have attorneys, right? You may think, "Oh, I'm going to go be a lawyer. Then I don't have to be a salesperson." Or I'm going to go be a doctor. Then I don't have to be a salesperson. Or I'm going to go, get a degree in whatever. Listen, I can just tell you now, whatever you go do, sales will be a part of it. Even if it's selling yourself to your boss for a promotion or some kind of new opportunity or raise or whatever, you can't get around it. And again, what you thought was the hard part is the easy part. Selling it is the harder piece. Okay. It's hard for any company to remain successful when the brains behind it move on. And our guest today is going to talk about how he shaped his organization to outlive him and go further than even his own career. We talk about how humility can work to benefit you as a founder. We talk about how sales, yes, it's important, but not selling out is equally important to your company's survival. So think about that. We get into how selling your company, brand, product, whatever it is a lot different than just trying to squeeze every bit of juice you can from it from a financial point of view. And finally, a simple tip for success: just do it and do more of it. This podcast today with the founder, or is he, of The Onion, Scott Dikkers, is going to blow your mind. This guy's brilliant. He's funny. We get dark. We bring it back. Enjoy. Today on the pod, we have someone who knows a thing or two about turning big ideas into something the world just can't stop talking about. He is the founder of The Onion. Yep, That Onion, the groundbreaking satire publication that reshaped comedy, media, and how we consume the news. He has built a career proving that making something funny, clever, or meaningful is only half the battle. Because as this man will tell you, making stuff is easy. Selling stuff is the hard part. Please welcome to the show, the Onion Man himself, Scott Dikkers.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Oh, man. I'm excited. Okay, so without giving it too much thought, Scott, when you heard this Shawnism, making stuff is easy, selling stuff is hard, what's the first thing that came to mind?
Well, it resonated with me immediately because I've always said that exact phrase. Like, it's kind of been the one challenge that's followed me throughout my life is, how do I sell myself? I make stuff, I make skits and funny stories and cartoons and movies, radio plays, like any medium you've got, I'll put something in it and I'll make something. But when it comes to like selling it and getting it out there and getting people to somehow discover it or see it, I have no idea. And so, it's one of those things where I've tried to do the mindset shift where I don't say I'm bad at that thing. I try to say I'm working on that. I'm trying to get better at that. And I am, and I have tried, and I've taken so many courses on like marketing, online marketing, sales, learning like distribution platforms, learning social media, stuff like that, because that's how you sell in the modern age. But for most of my life, the only way I knew how to get anything seen was to just do it and do more of it and just like throw it out there. It was like this spaghetti against the wall approach. And one of the things I did was I never put my name on anything or my face on anything. It was all anonymous. I had a very popular comic strip before I ever got involved with The Onion that was pseudonymous, and nobody knew it was me. My name wasn't connected with it. And then when I got involved with The Onion, of course, the whole thing there's no names on anything. And even the names in the staff box were hidden, stuff like that. And the roles were very amorphous and everything. And I've learned since then that like it's important that people know who you are and what you're doing, because then when you move on from that thing, like I've moved on from so many projects that have been really successful with zero capital. I have no asset once I leave the asset that I built.
Wow.
And so I'm always starting from scratch. I've started from scratch more times than I can count. And so like even now to hear you do that introduction, you're calling me the founder of The Onion. It's not a term I use because there were two guys who founded it in 1988. And then they sold it to me in 1989, and it still had like 15,000 circulation. It was a print newspaper in Madison, Wisconsin. And then I built it my whole life up to, where it is today, spending, most of my first, I would say my first 30 years of adult life doing that. And so I called one of the original guys and said, so you guys are the founders, but like I'm trying to like put myself out there. Could I call myself a founder? He's like, you're a founder. You're a founder. And
good. I'm glad you came to that conclusion because I was about to set you straight.
but I'm still a little reticent and sheepish about it. And I'll now I say I'm the founder of theonion.com because that's true. And I did found the website, and nobody knows it was a newspaper before that. But it's one of these things. It's like, why am I so averse to self-promotion? I need to get better at that, because in this day and age, it's like your personal brand is everything. And so a lot of these people who start companies, like look at you, you start a company and you have a podcast. Steve Jobs starts a company, buys some companies, sells some companies. He's a celebrity. He does, these talks where he reveals the new products and he becomes this like tech celebrity. And I've never wanted that for myself, but I see the value in it. Like when you're a brand, when you're Colonel Sanders and your image is iconic, that helps your business and that helps you sell it without you having to do any like of the real hardcore quote unquote sales. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. No, look, you've unpacked, half a dozen channels we have to go down and explore. So first of all, thank you. I think you've already teased out a ton of notions that I think a lot of people struggle with. And I've struggled with myself along the way, because while I very early on felt the power of PR and, giving a face to a brand, at the same time, the brand wasn't, Nelson Beanbags or whatever. The brand was Lovesack.
Right.
And Lovesack could be things that I could not. And so, first of all, there's value in both the anonymity and the power of something that can take on a personality. Like The Onion has a personality.
Yep.
That is not necessarily you. It might be, but like I'm sure it has a lot of you in it, but it also
We have a
probably
lot
has,
in common.
yeah. I feel the same way with Lovesack, but also I know the differences and there's value in that. We can unpack that. But before we do some of that, I think that a lot of people struggle with this notion of, how to put themselves out there. Should they be putting themselves out there? To some people it comes super naturally.
Yeah.
And in fact, more and more I see it. I mean, you can see it all around us, right? Like some of the biggest brands on earth now are built by just humans.
Right.
What were sometimes soccer moms that have pivoted into making
Right.
videos, and now they're competing with Procter and Gamble.
I know, it's crazy. Selling their brands for $1 billion.
Yeah. And it is crazy. And it's an amazing time to be alive. And to a large degree, that's the spirit of this podcast, right? Like the world is moving fast. We don't all have to make the same mistakes. We will learn the same things, right? Like you've just proven through a medium that's completely different than mine. Like I literally make things of foam and fabric and wood. And, I have 4, 5, 600 container loads of product on the water on ships right now coming this way that need to be sold. On the other hand, you this morning could think of a clever ideal, turn it into a comic strip or a meme now. And so our products couldn't be more different. But as you prove, we've learned the same things. Like you said the same thing. Making stuff's easy, selling stuff's hard. And so these are just true notions. And that's what we do each week on the podcast is unpack these true notions. So um, let's come back to founder for a second, because it's a word that gets thrown around. It's super popular to be an entrepreneur. I think it's to some degree celebrated too much actually in our culture, but it's true nonetheless. Let's get to the root of the word, like foundry, like shaping metal on an anvil.
Which is really what it is. And you have to be shirtless while you're doing it and glistening. Because most people, like the vast majority of people, have no interest in that. They don't want to found anything. They need the security of a computer printed paycheck from an already established company.
Yeah.
They have no interest in venturing out on their own and starting a thing that might one day employ people.
Or creator.
Or creator, yeah.
Or no, I'm saying or creator, like or fail, like to
Or
your point,
creator, yeah.
right? Not everyone's up for that.
Totally.
And yeah,
people, and that's probably why they don't want to do it. They're afraid of failing. And so if you're a founder, you have some kind of like missing piece of your brain where you're not afraid of that risk. You're not afraid of that failure, and you're just going to try it anyway and learn from it and move on. When you do comedy, people assume that you're funny. And I always try to tell people, my God, like if you had met me in high school or before, you would have thought I was the least funny person in the entire world. It's all about what you enjoy doing and you do more of and more of and more of that and fail at. If you keep doing something because you love it, that's the perfect ingredient, because you're going to fail a lot, but you won't care because you love doing it. So you're going to keep coming back at it. And that's how you learn. That's how you build a skill. And so anybody who people think of as like naturally funny or whatever, even if there's somebody who does comedy in the written format, or if they're a movie director or whatever, rest assured that follows a lifetime of humiliating failure, a bombing. People just thinking this doesn't work at all. Why are you in this business? And we were really lucky at The Onion because we had a business model, and we had a guy, my business partner, who sold ads. He sold local ads for this newspaper, and all we had to do was fill it with garbage, fill it with crap. And if a couple of things every week were amusing, we'd live to print another issue, and he'd sell another pizza coupon or another ad for a local bar, and we'd stay in business. And you do that for enough years, then you become an established like part of the city, the fabric of the city, like expects to see this weekly newspaper that's silly, that isn't like all the other newspapers. and then you reach a critical point, but like there's so many mistakes in there, and you realize the hit ratio is very low.
Yep.
Maybe 5% of everything you're
Yep.
putting out is good.
Mm.
And obviously, you learn and you get other people involved and they help, and you put your heads together. You come up with systems for weeding out the stuff that's not that great before you print it. And yeah, it's definitely a different mindset to be the founder.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're getting at, because you've now said it at least twice on this podcast already. Doing things and doing them more and doing them more and more and more.
Yeah.
And and I think that there's always at least two games going on, if I may, that founders are wrangling with, because you are a founder, and anyone who's banging on metal, shirtless and glistening, anyone who's shaping that metal really is a founder and has a founder mentality. And I think it's okay. I mean, no one thinks of Elon as anything but the founder of Tesla. Certainly wasn't by definition, but certainly is by function. And so, first of all, just embrace that and recognize that besides your value in banging on steel and shaping it, you also do have the opportunity to leverage the PR value that is very real, and even more real today than it's ever been. People buy things from people more and
Right.
more. And you'd think it would be different, because it's like business has sort of like gentrified everything, and you can now go to business school. I mean, you always kind of could, but in the last 20 years now, starting a business, when I was doing it, I like to joke around in the late 90s, we were bootstrapping before I think that word was a word, for real. And it's not to say that we're the first people to start a company, but like this in our day and age today, it's not uncommon to see a 13-year-old with a YouTube channel making millions, or
I
doing
know.
something, right?
I think the
And
word bootstrapping came from the insult that conservatives would always give to their kids, like "pull yourself up by your bootstraps."
yeah,
And
yeah.
people like took that and took ownership of that and said, "Yeah, I'm bootstrapped and I'm doing it." So the world is different. You're right.
Well, there's the game of shaping the onion, like you described. You're right. We'll come back to the comic strips, line by line, week by week. And then there's also the game, if you choose to, of promoting it in some way. And it doesn't have to be person led, but it can be. And there can be great value in that, not only for the organization, whatever, whoever's listening, right? But also for you, like you described, Scott. And it's something so interesting to hear you just be honest about your feelings. Perhaps you could have or should have done it differently. And perhaps not. There's something really clever in your particular story about having stayed anonymous. It allowed you, I think, I'm guessing, to be political without being political, or be political without necessarily taking on some of the consequences of making it personal. Maybe, I don't know. I'm interested to hear that. But I think this is interesting for anyone listening, to hear you talk about.
Well, I appreciate you digging into that. I had an opportunity. So when I was owner editor of The Onion for most of its first like 20 years or so, one of our ad sales people and I were doing some work on the side. He also wrote for The Onion a little bit, so he was a comedy guy. We were writing TV scripts, trying to sell a script to the TV show Martin Lawrence. Yeah. We wrote a bunch of episodes, and he said to me one time, he said, "Dude, why isn't your name on The Onion? Why don't you have your picture on the front page every week with a little column? Like, look what Stan Lee did with Marvel. Like, why can't you be the Stan Lee of The Onion? And you could have a catchphrase like Excelsior, like he does, and et cetera, et cetera. And you could rename it. You call it Scott Dikkers The Onion." And I didn't even like consider it for a second, because for me, the whole point of The Onion, well, first of all, I had learned from mistakes of the past. So the National Lampoon and Spy Magazine were founded and run by really funny, creative guys, all happened to be like Harvard Lampoon writers. And readers knew who they were. And as soon as they left, like the two guys who started Spy Magazine, which was by far the best humor publication of the 90s in America, maybe the world, they sold it to some investor. I don't know how much he paid, low single digit millions. As soon as he bought it, he didn't like pay them to stay on or consult or anything. They just took the money and ran. Everybody abandoned the publication, went out of business like within a matter of a couple of years. Because the two guys had made themselves kind of celebrities. You knew who they were. Their names were there. They wrote a column, just like my guy, Mike Hirsch, was recommending I do at The Onion. One of them had a column in the inside front page of Spy Magazine every week. Same with National Lampoon. Doug Kinney and I'm spacing on the other guy's name. They were celebrities of the National Lampoon. And as soon as they left, the readers were like, hey, it's not going to be funny anymore, because these guys were the brains behind it. And so when we started The Onion, it was Spy was at its peak. The National Lampoon was like a dead corpse at that point. I knew it was really important not to make us into celebrities. And the two guys who founded it, in year one, they were starting to do that same thing where they were putting themselves on the front page, making themselves characters. And they're funny guys. They would have been great characters, but I knew that was a long-term mistake. And
hold on. Let me interrupt, because I just got to call out. You knew it was a long-term mistake, having watched these guys take a pile of money from having done exactly that. And so what I hear is like, you had a vision and a desire for The Onion to prevail and to continue long beyond if it needed to be or had to be your own. And I think that's your own tenure. And I think that's, you could call that noble. You could look back and call it short-sighted from a personal standpoint.
You could call it crippling self-sabotage. You could call it financial negligence. You call it anything you want. But so that was the thing I wanted for The Onion, was I wanted it to survive, because the National Lampoon and Spy Magazine literally died because of what happened. And The Onion has been around for almost 40 years now because we didn't do that. And so
I love it.
As soon as those two guys left after year one, we never did that again. We never made any writer or publisher or editor a celebrity or a personality. What we did was we made The Onion the character. So The Onion is a character. And I had a very distinct character profile for what The Onion was. It's the classic comedic archetype of the bumbling authority, which is a character archetype that audiences absolutely love. You see it in Sergeant Frank Drebin in the Police Squad movies, Naked Gun movies. Ralph Cramden was a bumbling authority. Ron Burgundy is, you get the point. So it's somebody who's got a minimal level of authority, in society, but they're a fool. And so we love that. We love laughing at them. It's a great way to see people in authority brought down a peg. And so that's what The Onion is. It looks like a very serious, important newspaper, but everything that it says is silly. And so I knew that if we made The Onion the character, it wouldn't matter. Like, people could come and go, staff could come and go, owners could leave, sell out, and nobody would ever know.
Well, look at The Simpsons.
Really important to me. Yeah, exactly.
Longest running show. These people never age. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I love how so many other shows have taken that on. Family Guy does that. South Park does that, where nobody ages. It's wonderful. And, Matt Groening has been, affiliated with the show since the beginning. But yeah, the writers, although there have been some that have been there for a long time, they wax and wane. And, one of the executive producers now is a former Onion writer, So crazy.
There's something I want to poke at here, because I'm really interested to hear you come at both sides. And what I mean by that is, first of all, I want to point out to anyone listening how intentional you were. It's not like you just wrote funny stuff and you kept, like you said earlier, the simple version, do it and do more of it and do it some more. Yes. At the same time, do it with a lot of intention. Like you weren't just making funny lines and trying to get people to subscribe. You were very intentional about creating Onion in the way you described, making it a character, this bumbling authority. Like, there's a lot of depth there, a lot of intention, and even being intentional about not, making yourself famous through it. On the other hand, you already expressed a bit of I won't call it remorse, but introspection around the idea like, hey, maybe I could have or should have in the end. Do you think, in the spirit of like I don't know, the title of this podcast, right? Like both, let me save you 25 years and how you let off in the beginning. Do you think you could have done both? Like, I'm really interested to hear what you think. You know, you have the benefit of 40 years now. Do you think you could have both allowed the youngin to become this bumbling authority and have a tenure that could persist beyond you and benefit both the youngin and yourself by taking more of a front seat? Or is it one or the other?
No, it's not. There's definitely some in betweens. Like if I had stayed on as owner editor, then I totally could have been a celebrity. I could have been like a Steve Jobs of comedy and just been the face of it, because then I would always be there. So if I ever left, then that would be a disaster. And that's why I didn't do that, because I wanted the freedom of being able to leave if I ever wanted to leave, because I know myself and I know that I'm going to get tired of doing the same thing. Even though at The Onion, I got to take a lot of breaks and I would leave for years at a time and I would make a movie, I would do other things. So, but sometimes I just need the mental actual divorce to happen, the separation to happen, and I needed that freedom. And so I don't think I could have done that and still had the power to leave. I think the way I did it was good, which is I started being more vocal about myself and my involvement in The Onion only after I left and was completely out, had sold all my shares. And I sold them off like piecemeal over the years. And so when I sold my final shares and I knew I would never go back and they were on their own, now I'm out there saying, yeah, I was the Onion guy, because now I can't hurt it. It's fine and I can do whatever I want. It's not going to affect it. It's its own separate entity.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. And I think it's a very self-aware approach. It's interesting that you had the self-awareness along the way to connect those dots and be intentional about how you shaped it. And I'm always on this podcast talking about self-awareness because I just view that as the root of success. You've had success. You brought success to yourself, obviously, financially, ultimately, through all the ways you've described this long career. You've brought success to the youngin, and you built something that can last. And I just have so much respect for that. Like that's people sometimes they meet me and we just met, but if we spent more time, you discover like I'm pretty jacked about Lovesac, and people will be like, why are you so stoked about a company that you started like 27 years ago? It's having, it's still slogging along, making couches, doing its thing. And we've experienced crazy growth and it's been a lot of fun, whatever. But the reason I'm still so excited is because one, we have a lot in the tank still. Like I can see where we can take it and keep growing it and make it huge and awesome. But two, like I'm so intrigued by this idea of just building something, like building a brand. Because brands, what's funny about a brand these days? And like I was saying earlier about how like the plates have shifted, like the opportunity for even individuals to spin up something, anything, and take it to scale has never been as available as it is today. I won't call it easy because it's not easy, but it's available.
Totally available.
But in this day and age where, you would know better than anyone, our institutions are just letting everybody down right and left.
Yeah.
Whether it's government, schools, churches, like it seems like everything is just, a letdown. And what's funny is if it's managed right, brands, and this is true by research, certain brands, certain even businesses are more trusted than, society's proper institutions. Now, not all, there's plenty of bad examples too. But my point is I have the chance maybe to build something like that gets to employ thousands, that gets to put out products that could last forever, which I think is a good thing fundamentally. It will mean we'll never be the biggest because unlike Apple, I'm not going to sell you the same device every year on a con that, the battery's wearing out. Right. Like, so I can't ever be the biggest, But like, I just want to spend the rest of my life doing that because I think it's pretty cool to try and do that. And it won't be the most profitable way for me to live my life either. As you kind of touched on, like there are moves you probably could have made to squeeze more financial gain for yourself, but you made the choice to build something lasting. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean that's a scary state of affairs that you lay out there. That the most trusted authority in the modern world is the merchant class. God help us
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
God help us all.
I mean, they
Like
used to be
where?
despised. It's like the
Yeah,
new money, you
you
know?
know, I want that to be the government because the government ideally doesn't have an ulterior motive. The merchant class has an ulterior motive. They're just trying to make a profit, you know, and they've got in this fiduciary responsibility that's just frightening, where they'll go to the ends of the earth to profit, you know, even if it hurts people. You know, I want to be able to trust communities where you know that their goal is to make life better. Like, yes, corporations do want to make life better, but they also want to make a profit. You know,
Yeah.
that's their
Yeah.
main goal, is a profit. So that is a sad state of affairs.
It is.
You're right. And like that, sadly, that's kind of where we're at right now. And so
So,
some brands are trying to step up, and it's
yeah.
creepy. Like I feel a little creeped up. I feel like we're living in Brave New World, you know,
Oh,
where
I totally agree. I mean, it's almost hard to believe the amount of foresight, you know, uh, Aldous Huxley, George Orwell had
oh, I know, amazing foresight.
to write what they wrote.
I know. And this book behind me, We, was the that's the cover of We, was the inspiration for 1984. It's a great Russian novel about similar, you know, totalitarian regime. I do you know W. Edwards Deming? Do you know that guy?
No.
So he was a guy that went to Japan right after World War II, and he was an American like management expert.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and he was
Quality without tears. Yeah.
total quality management, they called it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I had the great fortune of editing a series of talks for a total quality management gathering. So like Pete Drucker was there and all these management gurus. W. Edwards Deming was there before he died. He's like in his 90s. And I worked at Wisconsin Public Radio in Madison, and I edited this series of talks. And so I listened to them over and over and over, and they like sunk into my brain. This is in the very early years of The Onion, like year 2, year 1, like right in there. And they talked so often about obviously helping companies treat their employees better and to grow bigger. And obviously the Japanese economy speaks for itself. Like they rebuilt into one of the top economies in the world after being totally devastated in the space of like 30, 40 years. It's just incredible turnaround. So that really, you know, that's like an amazing testimonial right there. And they have this thing in total quality management about, yeah, you should work on your company, but we should also apply this to communities and governments. So we're always, you know, putting the customer first, thinking about constant improvement, all these things. And I totally applied all those things to The Onion, and I tried to do it in a way that, you know, didn't make profit first, because I know that really for smart companies, profit is second. If
Yeah.
you think about like, I want to do good and I want to help people, and that's number one, profit will take care of itself and you're going to be fine. You know,
Yeah.
yes, you're not going to own the world and you're not going to own the Congress with all your bribes, but you're going to be doing fine. You're going to be in good shape. And, you know, we're kind of off our topic of sales here, but in terms of like building a business, I felt like, yeah, I didn't know anything about sales, but I felt like I really learned how to build a good business.
No, I love that. And I think, and don't worry, off topic is what this podcast does best.
Oh, good. You meander. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really brilliant. And I think it's so cool to hear you. You know, I'm sure sometimes a person, I mean, I can't imagine being Will Ferrell or Adam Sandler or one of these people. I was like, okay, be funny now. I'm sure you
Awful.
probably get that in your circles too, or you feel that sometimes, but it's so cool to hear you as a person who's trafficked in the most absurd and comedy, speak about company culture, speak about building a business, speak about being intentional, with your role, with PR, with all of it. Because that's what I love about this podcast is the overarching conclusion that I've come to is like, and that's the spirit of these Shawnisms. I get to throw them at people like you, cold, not even knowing, but knowing that we all learn the same stuff. It's so wild. Like I could give you we're up to 60 something Shawnisms out there. And you'd be like, yep, in your own way, right? Because if you throw yourself into the crucible, I like this, of the founder, where you're shaping steel, you're going to learn all the same lessons, man. You're going to get burned. You're going to, you're going to, suffer. You're going to feel pride. You're going to do all these things and through it, learn these same lessons. So I think it's very interesting. I got to ask you though, as someone who's closely observed the waxing and waning of these institutions, all the institutions, and in fact found opportunity to dissect them, satirize them, to some degree in a tangential way, shape them a little bit, right? Shape public opinion, help drive public opinion. What do you see today? Like you've watched it in the long arc of 40. Is it truly, sometimes here's what I'm getting at. Sometimes I find myself feeling like, kids these days. And then I just wonder, like, is it just that I'm getting older and it was always this state of entropy, it's just falling apart and fixing itself as we go? Or is it really just worse than ever? Like, what do you see?
I appreciate the question. My feeling on that is that there is an inexorable tide of history, and we have gotten confused in the last 100 years or so into thinking what that tide is. And I think Martin Luther King was dead wrong when he said the arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Completely wrong. I think if you look at the last 100 years in the West, it's right, because we really did move toward, we started with an independent democracy that had, slavery. And then over the decades, we fight a civil war, we get rid of the slavery, but we still have this, terrible inequality with women, with Black people. But we're moving in the right direction. The sphere of rights is expanding. Mm-hmm. And then we have FDR's New Deal, or we have Teddy Roosevelt's like How the Other Half Lives response, which is, hey, we should have government regulations that prevent slumlords from, allowing 30 people in a single room all dying of, Spanish flu. We should have minimum standards so that we're not hurting people. We're not selling poison as food and killing people, which they did in the 1800s, Mm-hmm. And then you had FDR with the New Deal, and you basically create this middle class. And it really looked like there was progress. But here's my broader view of the human equation and of just all of human history. There is an inexorable tide of history that is humans, because of whatever weaknesses we have, and this is going to be really dark, I apologize.
Yeah, no,
they say in Hollywood, they say, never invite a comedy writer to a party. Because we'll get dark really fast.
I love it.
So the inexorable tide of history is humans will always gravitate toward authoritarian, totalitarian societies where all the wealth and power are, exist only in this tiny top percent, and everybody else lives like a serf. in service to the top 1%. There is something about us, and it's a collective personality trait. It may not be like an individual trait, where the boldest, the most narcissistic, the meanest people the football players, will become the leaders, the kings, the czars. For hundreds of thousands of years, most human societies were totalitarian cults, basically. And it's only in the last, couple hundred years that we've had a functioning democracy as like a shining light in human history. It's like, hey, this is a better way to do it. But that in no way means that that's going to continue, or that that's what humans are always going to be, or that it's going to get better. So we really fell into a trap in the early to mid 20th century when we saw all those movies about the future, and there were a lot of utopian visions, B.F. Skinner, like these amazing futuristic societies where everyone is treated amazingly. What a wonderful dream. And I grew up with those. Like I grew up in the 60s and 70s and thought that was what the future was going to be. It was going to be this Buckminster Fuller, Frank Lloyd Wright future where humans were, in unity with nature, and everybody, could be their best. And now it's like, how many of us are living in indentured servitude? How many of us couldn't survive a $500 emergency? And yet, how wealthy is the 0.01%? We're moving back toward that, and it's very natural for human beings.
Yeah.
That's our natural state. And it's very sad to me. It's very disappointing. Like, I'm just super disappointed in human beings because we had it within our grasp. It was like, oh, we're so close to a utopia, but we can't have it. We can't have it.
Wow.
So, and as far as like the Onion being a shaper of opinion or tastemaker or politics, I don't buy that for 1 second. I don't think you can ever touch that deep, inherent. There's something in our evolutionary psychology that make us want to live in authoritarian cults. You see the power of it. You see the power of how people gravitate toward that stuff, and how fascism is rising around the world. That's who we are.
Yeah. I cannot disagree with you. I share a lot of the same observations and conclusions you articulated so beautifully, actually. I think, I don't mean to be sad, in fact, or dark. I think that for me, this is something I pride myself on, the ability to, even look, I could bend your ear for 2 hours about our government and about, the CIA, all the places we could go. But it's somehow, I still think that there is great value because your life or my life or anyone listening to this podcast life is finite. And in fact, it's quite short in the scheme of the kind of history that you just described. And I think our ability to both be aware, let's say that anyone listening, including me, adopted the point of view that you just shared. It could be, you have two choices, right? You either throw up your hands and kind of give up because we're screwed, or you can be aware of it and stay buoyant, fight the fight if you choose, don't fight the fight if you choose, and go, just try to enjoy your time. But either way, it doesn't need, even a dark outlook like what you described, doesn't need to bring us down. And that's something I really love about institutions like the Onion, is that, like you said, you can just keep doing it and doing more of it. And there's value in it, even if it's not able to affect the longest arc of history, however that unfolds. I actually agree with you. And it doesn't mean that we have to lead a fatalistic life. We can lead a buoyant, exciting adventure in the long arc of that history.
Totally. Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I think the Onion's job is to make that journey wherever we're going, which way we're going, more pleasurable. to be able to laugh at our situation and our, fundamental human foibles. You got to be able to laugh at them. And some people might say that's like, we're going to hell in a handbasket. We might as well laugh at it. Another way to look at it is, and this is the way I look at it, like I'm a positive-minded, optimistic person. I have hope that human beings are smart enough, and we can figure our way out. And recognizing that we have a problem is the first step. To at least be able to say, hey, this is a tendency that we have. And this is where I think the founding fathers were really smart. They knew that because they had seen all these tyrants in Europe and all these kings, and they knew what human proclivities were. And so they built this government that protected against all that, with the checks and balances and the, not making the president a king. Let's make the president this like bureaucratic person who had to be checked by these other branches. So smart, so smart. Yeah. And they stole that all from the Iroquois Indians, by the way. They had a wonderful system that had 4 branches of government. And so Benjamin Franklin looked at that and he was like, well, let's take 3 of them and we'll make our government a 3-branch government. Guess what the 4th branch was? And God, if we only had that now, guess what the fourth branch of government was? A collection of all the oldest and wisest postmenopausal women who could veto anything that the other 3 branches did. They were the final check. Isn't that brilliant?
Wow.
Why don't we have that? Imagine them coming in and saying, Supreme Court, you got that one wrong. This is how we're doing it.
Wow.
Like the grandmothers.
Wow.
The Council of Grandmothers. Why don't we have that?
That's fascinating. I've never heard that, but I love it. I stole one of my favorite quotes that we adopted into our culture at Lovesack. Sell it from the Iroquois. We're borrowing this earth from our children.
Wonderful.
But I hadn't heard that before. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, they were a powerful nation. The Iroquois Confederacy was like a confederacy of several nations. And so they had to deal with a lot of the things that America did with all these different states, which they thought of as different nations. Before the Civil War, the United States was a plural. And after the Civil War, it was a singular. Wow. So we have more to learn. We could do more. We're a young country, so we're going to make a lot of mistakes.
Wow. Well, thank you for taking us down that path. And I think it's a message that I honestly, at this point, think about daily. This idea that we can both adopt even a dark view, if we choose, of humanity and the future that might belie us, as well as maintain optimism, buoyancy, and celebrate all of the lifelong to be had along the way. Because, by the way, these arcs can be quite long. And in fact, they can also, there's waves within the waves. And I think we've seen this happen just in the last few decades of my adult life, where you think things are at their worst or their darkest. And then you can have a better part of a decade that, even though there's always dark things happening, goes pretty well, whether it's economically or wildfires. I don't know, pick your medium. But I think that's valuable for anyone listening. And I think that humor, I think Lovesack is actually, if you got closer to the brand, you might understand what I'm talking about, is some strange cousin to the Onion.
Well, I'm definitely going to visit one of the stores.
Yeah. Check it out. Go, because we started by making giant bean bags and full of foam that you sink into like a pillow. And it just put a smile on people's face. In the end, people weren't buying the quality of our fabric or the quality of our foam. They were trying to take up home a piece of that weird store they flopped into while walking through the mall. And then, of course, we took that further and have made other products and built a whole brand around it. But I view our role as much the same, right? Like people get to, there's a lot of value in just enjoying the journey and enjoying the adventure, even while humanity tries to devolve around us. And that is what's happening, I think, to some degree. And that's okay. like it's not
It's
okay, but
it's going to
it,
happen. It's going to happen.
it's okay. Like we can stay optimistic. So I want to pull it back because I want to hear from you a little more about before we wrap up. In the spirit of, how about this? In the spirit of let me save you 25 years. You now have had multiple adventures in your life. You're doing new things. I want to hear about that. But also, like, what piece of advice do you have for someone in your shoes a decade or two or three ago that on this topic or related to this topic of, look, it's easy to make stuff, hard to sell. What have you learned along the way that you could offer?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is definitely like what try to get past this fear of failure, like, and fail small, like fail in a safe environment. You don't have to bet the farm. You can try something small and fail at that. But know that failure is the best teacher. You're never
Mm-hmm.
going to learn more than when you fail. And the other thing is, like, I hear different bits of advice about this. Like, if there's a skill set that you lack, some people say, don't waste your time with it. It's the Pareto principle. Leave that alone. You're never going to be an ace at it. Focus on what you do best.
Hmm.
But I'm kind of the mind that you should work on it at least to get competent. If it's something that's really important, like sales, if you're in business, you should know something about sales. You shouldn't be a complete idiot. So I would say, like, take a course, like get a job and learn from a mentor, and just like devote some time to shoring up those skills that you think you're totally lacking in. I think if you did those two things, if you like tried some stuff and didn't worry about failing, number one, and number two, shored up some like business skills that you think you lack in, like a low pressure way, those two things alone would take you a long way, would probably save you a lot of grief. I don't know about 25 years, but it would certainly save you a lot of grief building something and starting something.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I love your, unintentional mantra, do it and do more of it. And then do more and more and more. I think that the amount your story is so valuable to anyone listening because and I think my story is too, in the sense that the publications will always celebrate the super outliers. And so when we have a path to when we have a billionaire who got there overnight, or when we have a company that somehow just landed in the right, you know, tooth of the sprocket of the zeitgeist to propel it to ridiculousness, you know, in a year, and someone's a billionaire off of that. These are the stories that get heard. And you and I just, another day of, in my case, stuffing sacks, in your case, another day of writing comic strips or whatever, are slogging it out for years and years and years before you end up in a place where at some point someone somewhere gives you some kind of award or puts you up on a stage somewhere and, touts how amazing you are. And I think that stories like yours and mine are the most common, actually, success stories out there. They're just not heard as loudly or as often as the ones that are just the super outliers. And so for those of you who feel like, dude, I'm already years in and I'm still just grinding, you know what? Double it. And I hate to say that.
No, but it's true. And you got to try to find the joy in it, because you'll never keep doing it if you don't love it. You got to be doing something you love. That's so critical. That gets you through all those failures.
Exactly. I say, one of my most quoted Shawnisms now, hopefully I don't come to regret it, even around my own company, is play along the way.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Because if you don't play along the way, you'll just have grown old doing it.
Yes,
But there's a good chance that you can grow old and experience a fair amount or even wild success if you're willing to, as you said, do it and do more of it as for as long as it takes. And I think that
absolutely.
it's trite advice, but it's probably the best advice I can offer.
Yeah, it's pretty central. Pretty central. It's sad to see people too afraid to do that, and just not living up to their potential. Like, what are we missing out on that they're doing that, you know?
Yeah. And I think you should count yourself lucky. If you're in a place where you get to grind like that and you're not just trying to make ends meet only, like you're actually founding something. And I don't mean you have to be a founder. I come back to that root word. You're shaping metal. You're part, by the way, there are people at Lovesac who don't get to be called founder, but they're founders. They are bending the metal with me, and they should take great pride in that. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You have had them at the Onion, right?
Totally.
What are you doing now? And what's your outlook?
Thanks for asking, Shawn. I left the Onion about 10 years ago now and started teaching comedy at the Second City Training Center in Chicago, and really enjoyed that. It's one of my favorite parts of the job at the Onion. Was we'd always hire green people. Didn't want anyone with any comedy experience, because we didn't want people with bad habits. So I would train people how to do comedy, and I loved that. So I basically transferred that to the Second City, and now I do it online at howtowritefunny.com. I've written a series of books about how to write comedy, and that's kind of my day job, I guess, running that business, How to Write Funny. And we're planning right now, very excited about this, the first annual Funny Con, which is next year, April 1, of course, where it'll be workshops on comedy performances, movie screenings. And my favorite part about it, and you've mentioned this a couple of times, there's going to be an award show where we're going to award the funnies. So funniest movie, funniest stand-up comedian, funniest TV show. These things are rarely recognized in their own time. Mm-hmm. It's the serious dramatic works that get the awards. The funny stuff never does. So this is going to be an annual award show, and I expect the funnies will be mentioned in the same breath as the Emmys, the Grammys, the Tonys, and everybody else.
Love it.
I'm super excited to get that going. And people can go to funny-con.com to get more information. Tickets are actually going to be going on sale within the week, so I'm really excited about that. Early bird tickets.
This is for the live event?
Yeah.
I want to come.
Funny
That's
Con.
amazing.
Yeah, it's in Chicago, of course, center of comedy. And what else am I working on? I got a book coming out in a couple of weeks, all about much of what we've been talking about, the Onion story. I think I have a copy here, and I think if I hold it up, your video won't turn it around and make it backwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Onion story.
The Onion story is my journey from the beginning to the present at the Onion, and there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened, a lot of fun antics, a lot of brushes with the mafia and the law, and a lot of public nudity. It's a lot of fun.
Public nudity. I'm in. Yeah. Sounds like I shouldn't get the audio version, apparently.
There's no pictures. And the pictures that you make in your mind will be just as good if you listen to the audio versus read the book.
Okay, so I am literally I just ordered How to Write Funny because it's something that I sorely lack. And the Onion story, get it. I'm excited and really grateful for your wonderful take on the world and your advice, and really grateful that you built something that's lasting, that's bigger than you, that who doesn't know the Onion, right? Like you've built something that is a piece of our fabric of our modern life. Like, how cool is that, man?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. When you start something, you just never know. You never think that could happen. So it's been an amazing ride. It's delightful to meet you, Shawn. And, I feel like you're in this very small minority of people with me, somebody who has built a company that is a part of the culture and a part of a thing. And I'm so excited to discover it. And I'm definitely going to go to the Mall of America and sit in one of your couches.
Well, I'm definitely going to track the funnies. My wife will only let us watch comedies. I love the super dark stuff, and sadly, I'm on my own there. So it's all comedy. And it's sad because, by the way, I was just reflecting on this. There are no comedies almost at all in like the top movies right now, just like in the Apple Store, because there's so few being made.
Yeah, that's a thing that Hollywood's going through, where they're not making a lot of big comedy movies.
Yeah. And we need them.
It's unfortunate. Oh, we desperately need them.
yeah, not just for the relief valve of it, but because like, I think it's one of the most effective ways, as you know. I mean, we could probably spend another hour on this, so we won't go down it, but one of the most effective ways to make statements or to nudge public opinion,
Story.
Yeah.
Long narrative story. I agree. There's nothing like a movie.
Well, I want more of it. I think that your mission to celebrate that and stoke it has value on this earth, beyond even, just your, let's call it industry. And I commend you for chasing it down. I'm interested. I'm excited to see the funnies. I want to go because I want to say like I was at the first ever, Grammys or Oscars or whatever. That's cool.
Yeah, that'd be amazing to see you there. And I appreciate the kind words, Shawn. Yeah, we're going to have some fun.
I'm on it. Okay. You should follow Scott Dikkers on Twitter because that's where he makes noise, at DIKKERS, on Instagram at It's Scott Dikkers with those 2 Ks in there. Keep an eye out for FunnyCon, his annual award show happening next April. Register for it. Buy tickets. Let's go. Let's support the funnies.
Let's do this, people.
I will never win a funny because it's just not. I'm not.
I don't know. Funniest home furnishing item. Maybe that's a category. Maybe that's an award category. You could win.
Be sure to pre-order his book, as I just did. I couldn't wait. I had to get it in my queue. The Onion Story: How a Band of Misfits, Dropouts, and Sad Sacks built the world's most trusted news source. Thanks for the shout out in your book subtitle, Scott. There.
Yeah, everybody feels seen by that, I think. It's
out the day before my birthday, October 28th.
Sweet.
Thank you. Thank you. So he wrote it for me. It's like birthday. Thanks, Scott. Thank you so much to the jump starter of Jim's Journal. That's Scott's first known comic strip. The Wizard of Dry Wit, the unwavering onion man himself, Mr. Scott Dikkers.
Thank you very much, Shawn. Appreciate it.
And to all those listening, remember this: making anything is the easy part. Selling it is where it counts. So, as Scott says, do something, do more of it, especially the hard parts. It just may save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey.
Once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.